Where did you get that necklace? The man's voice was hoarse low and as sharp as a blade slicing straight into me. My wrist was gripped tight, the necklace had just fallen onto the table, and that small silver glint suddenly turned into deadly evidence. The crowd around us held their breath. I could clearly see Matteo Valente's eyes, the Mafia boss. Everyone feared narrowing as if he had just seen a ghost. I wanted to lie, but my tongue froze. A family keepsake. Just 3 words, and immediately mocking laughter erupted. A ragged little waitress dares wear something from the Valenti family. His fingers tightened, the blood in my veins felt like it stopped flowing. Why would an old necklace cause such an uproar? Why did the most powerful man of all look at me as if I had just dug up his past? I felt something wrong in the rhythm of my heartbeat, as though every beat echoed a curse. Matteo leaned close, whispering so only I could hear. You could be the daughter of the enemy I killed, or the flesh and blood I lost. My head spun. I didn't know who I was, didn't know why the trinket I had worn since childhood had turned into a death sentence. But one thing I was certain of from this moment on, I was no longer allowed to leave him. I am Lina Rossi. I was wiping down tables at the diner when it happened. The kind of night where the air feels heavy like it's holding its breath. I'd been on my feet for 10 hours, my sneakers sticking to the floor from spilled soda, my apron stained with ketchup and grease. My hair was falling out of its bun, and I was just trying to make it to closing without losing my mind. That's when I saw him walk in, Matteo Valente, all sharp suit and sharper eyes, like he owned the place and everyone in it. I didn't know who he was then. Not really, just that he wasn't the usual trucker or late-night regular. I reached to clear his table, and my necklace, the one I've worn since I was a kid, the one I never take off, slipped out from under my shirt and caught the light. It's a simple thing, silver with a small pendant shaped like a half moon. Nothing fancy, but it's all I've got from before. I don't even know what before means, just that it's mine, and it's always been mine. Matteo's eyes locked on it, and before I could tuck it back under my collar, he grabbed my wrist. Hard, not enough to hurt, but enough to stop my heart. Where did you get that necklace? He asked, his voice low like a blade sliding out of its sheath. I froze. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. His men sitting at the booth behind him stopped talking. The whole diner went quiet, like the world was waiting for my answer. I stammered something about it being a family heirloom, which wasn't a lie, but wasn't the whole truth either. I don't know the truth. His eyes darkened, and he let go of my wrist, but I could still feel the weight of his grip like it had marked me. I'm Lina, by the way. Lina Rossi. I'm 26, and I've been scraping by in this city my whole life. I'm not the kind of girl who turns heads. I'm not ugly, but I'm not the type you notice either. My hair's brown, usually tied back, and my clothes are whatever's clean and cheap. I work at this diner because it pays the bills barely, and I live in a one-room apartment with a leaky faucet and a mattress that creaks. But that necklace, it's the one thing that makes me feel like I'm more than just another face in the crowd. I don't know why it matters so much to me, only that it does. When Matteo grabbed my wrist, though, I felt small again, like I was a kid, caught stealing something I didn't even know I wasn't supposed to have. His men started laughing low and mean, calling me a raggedy waitress who dared to wear something that looked like it belonged to their world. One of them, a guy with slicked back hair and a scar across his cheek, leaned forward and said, "What's a broke? Nobody like you doing with a Valenti piece." I didn't know what he meant, but the way they said Valenti made it sound like a curse and a crown all at once. I wanted to run to hide, but my shift wasn't over and I needed the tips. So I just stood there, my hands shaking, as I tucked the necklace back under my shirt and told them I didn't know what they were talking about. Matteo didn't say another word. He just stared at me like he was trying to see through me, and then he stood up and left his men trailing behind him like shadows. The next morning, as I was scrubbing the diner's coffee machine, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up expecting another regular, but it was one of Matteo's men, the one with the scar. He didn't sit down, just stood by the counter, his eyes scanning me like I was a problem he needed to solve. He tossed a crumpled photo on the counter, a picture of a necklace. My necklace in a velvet box, like it was some kind of treasure. "Boss wants to know where you got this," he said, his voice flat but heavy with threat. I wiped my hands on my apron, trying to keep them steady, and said I didn't know, same as I told Matteo. He leaned in close, his breath sour with cigarette smoke, and hissed, "You're either a liar or a thief, and neither one's good for your health." I felt my stomach twist, but I didn't look away. I pushed the photo back toward him. my fingers brushing the edge of the counter for balance. "I'm neither," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted but firm. He smirked like he'd heard it all before and left without another word. I stood there, the photo still on the counter, my heart pounding so loud I thought the customers could hear it. I didn't know what that necklace meant to them, but I knew it was pulling me into something bigger than myself, something I wasn't sure I could handle. Hey, before I go on, I just want to take a second. If this story's hitting you, maybe you felt small or out of place, could you do me a favor? Grab your phone, give this video a like, drop a comment below, and hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me knowing you're out there listening to my story. It's just you and me here, and I'm grateful for that. All right, let me keep going. They came for me the next night. Not Mateo, but his men. 2 of them showed up at the diner just as I was locking up the neon sign flickering above the door. They didn't say much, just told me to come with them. I thought about running, but where was I gonna go? My apartment's a 15-minute walk, and I don't have a car. Plus, the way they stood there, all muscle and menace, made it clear running wasn't an option. They took me to a mansion on the edge of the city, the kind of place you see in movies. Big gates, marble floors, chandeliers that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. I was still in my diner uniform, smelling like fries and coffee, and they shoved me into a room with a long table and too many chairs. Mateo was there sitting at the head, his hands folded like he was waiting for a business meeting to start. I stood there, my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, feeling like a kid called to the principal's office. He didn't look at me like he had at the diner. This time, his eyes were cold, like he was weighing me, deciding if I was worth keeping alive. "Tell me about the necklace," he said, and it wasn't a question. I told him what I knew, which wasn't much, just that it was given to me when I was little before I ended up in foster care. I didn't know who gave it to me, only that it was mine. His jaw tightened, and he leaned forward, his voice so low I could barely hear it. "That necklace belonged to someone I lost. Someone important." I didn't know what to say to that. I mean, what do you say when a man like Mateo Valente looks at you like you're holding a piece of his soul? The next morning, I was still in that mansion trying to make sense of the locked doors and guarded hallways. A woman, one of the staff, brought me breakfast on a silver tray, her eyes darting away when I tried to thank her. As she turned to leave, she dropped a folded napkin on the floor. I picked it up, and inside was a scribbled note. "They're watching you. Don't trust the mirrors." I froze my fork halfway to my mouth and glanced at the full-length mirror across the room. It looked normal, just a fancy frame, and my own tired reflection staring back. But the note made my skin crawl. I folded it into my pocket, my fingers brushing the necklace still around my neck. Later that day, I caught one of Mateo's men standing too close to that mirror. His head tilted like he was listening to something. I didn't say a word, just kept my head down and ate my eggs, but my mind was racing. Who was watching? And why? I started noticing the mirrors everywhere in the hallways, the dining room, even the bathroom. Every time I passed one, I felt eyes on me, not just from the men in the house, but from something hidden, something I couldn't see. I didn't dare take the necklace off, but I started tucking it deeper under my shirt like it could protect me from whatever was coming. They didn't let me go home that night. They put me in a room upstairs with a bed bigger than my entire apartment and windows that looked out on a city I barely recognized from this high up. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my necklace, trying to piece together what was happening. I kept thinking about the way Mateo had looked at it, like it was a ghost he'd been chasing for years. The next day, they brought me clothes, nice ones, not the kind I could afford, and told me I was staying until Mateo figured out who I was. I didn't get it. I'm nobody. Just Lena, the girl who serves coffee and smiles at drunk customers at 2 a.m. But the way they watched me, the way they whispered when I walked by, made me feel like I was something else, something dangerous. I overheard one of the maids talking about a DNA test, about how Mateo was digging into my past. I didn't even know my own past, so good luck to him. All I had were fragments, foster homes, a social worker who smelled like cigarettes, a woman's voice singing to me before I was old enough to remember her face. And the necklace, always the necklace. One afternoon I was allowed to walk the gardens, probably because they thought I couldn't escape with all the guards around. The air was crisp, the kind that smells like wet leaves and earth. I was picking at the hem of the too fancy dress they'd given me when I heard footsteps crunching behind me. It was Dante Mateo's right-hand man, his smile, all teeth and no warmth. He held out a glass of wine like we were old friends and said, "You must feel like Cinderella, huh? From diner grease to this." I didn't take the glass. I just looked at him. my fingers tightening around the necklace under my shirt. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You know, a girl like you could disappear in a place like this. Nobody had even noticed. I felt a chill not from the air, but from the way his eyes gleamed like he was testing me, waiting for me to break. I stepped back, my foot catching on a stone, but I didn't fall. I'm not that easy to lose, I said, my voice steady, even though my heart wasn't. He laughed, but it wasn't friendly. As he walked away, I saw him pull out his phone and mutter something about keeping her in line. I didn't know who he was talking to, but I knew it wasn't Mateo. I stood there, the garden suddenly feeling too open, too exposed. And I wondered how many people in this house wanted me gone. A few days later, Mateo called me to his office. It was all dark wood and leather, the kind of place that smells like money and secrets. He didn't sit down, just stood by the window, looking out at the city like it was his to command. The necklace, he said, not turning around. It belonged to a child who was taken from me 20 years ago. A child I thought was dead. I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to ask questions, but my throat was dry, and all I could do was stand there clutching my bag like it was a lifeline. He turned to face me, his eyes searching mine. The Rossi family betrayed me. They took everything. I killed their leader for it. And now you're here wearing that necklace with their blood in your veins. I shook my head, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know any Rossi family. I'm just me. He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat of him, the weight of his presence. You might be their daughter, he said. Or you might be mine. Those words hit me like a punch. I didn't know what to believe, but the way he said it, like it was both a threat and a promise, made me realize I wasn't leaving this place until he had answers. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I wandered to the library in the mansion, a room full of books I'd never have time to read. The shelves were tall, the kind that need a ladder to reach the top, and the air smelled like old paper and wax. I was trailing my fingers along the spines when I found a book that didn't fit a thin, leather-bound journal tucked between two dusty novels. I pulled it out and a photo slipped to the floor. It was a woman maybe 30 with my eyes and a smile I almost remembered. She was holding a baby, and around the baby's neck was my necklace. My hands shook as I opened the journal, but the pages were in Italian, a language I didn't know. I flipped to the back where a single line was written in English. Protect her from the shadows. I didn't know what it meant, but I hid the journal under my dress, my heart racing. I didn't tell anyone, not even Mateo. But I started watching the people around me closer, especially Sofia Romano, whose laugh echoed through the halls like she was always one step ahead of everyone else. They threw a party a week later, some big Mafia thing with chandeliers and champagne, and women in dresses that cost more than my rent. They made me go dress me up in this silk gown that felt like it was choking me. I didn't belong there, and everyone knew it. Sofia Romano, this older woman with a smile like a snake, made sure of it. She was the widow of some big-shot mafia guy, and she carried herself like she owned the room. She looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe and said loud enough for everyone to hear, a waitress thinking she can be the lady of the Valenti house. Pathetic. The other women laughed, one of them spitting her wine back into her glass. Like my presence was an insult. I stood there, my face burning, my hands clenched at my sides. I wanted to disappear, to run back to my diner and my normal life, but I couldn't. Dante Mateo's right-hand man leaned in and whispered, "The boss doesn't need a heart, sweetheart. He just needs a toy." I looked at Mateo, waiting for him to say something, anything to shut them up. But he didn't. He just stood there sipping his drink, his face unreadable. I felt like I was drowning, like the whole room was pressing in on me. And all I could do was stand there and take it. During the party, I slipped away to the balcony, needing air, needing to be anywhere but in that room. The city lights stretched out below, cold and distant, and I gripped the railing, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I heard her, Sofia, her voice low and sharp, talking to someone in the shadows of the garden below. "She's a problem," she said. "If Mateo keeps her, it'll ruin everything we've built." I couldn't see who she was talking to, but I heard a man's voice, smooth and calculating, reply, "Then we make sure she's not his to keep." My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall out of sight, my fingers digging into the stone. I didn't know what they were planning, but I knew it was about me. I waited until their voices faded, then slipped back inside, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I didn't tell Mateo, not yet. I didn't know if I could trust him, not after he'd let me stand there alone in front of all those people. But I tucked that moment away like the journal, like the note, knowing I'd need it later. I started noticing things after that. Little things. The way Matteo watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way Sophia's smile tightened whenever my necklace caught the light. The way Dante's eyes lingered too long, like he was waiting for me to slip up. I wasn't allowed to leave the mansion, but I wasn't a prisoner either. I wandered the halls, trying to make sense of it all. One night, I found a photo in Matteo's study tucked away in a drawer. It was old, faded, but it showed a baby girl with a necklace just like mine. My heart stopped. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was important. I started piecing things together, bits and pieces from overheard conversations, from the way the maids whispered about a child who'd been taken during some big betrayal 20 years ago. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth was starting to take shape. I wasn't just some random girl. I was tied to this world, to Matteo, in ways I couldn't understand. The next day, I was summoned to a meeting not with Matteo, but with Sophia. She sat in a high-backed chair, her nails tapping against a glass of red wine, her eyes cold as she looked me over. "You're causing trouble," she said, like I was a child who'd spilled milk. "You don't belong here, and you know it." She slid a folder across the table, photos spilling out me at the diner, me walking to my apartment, me with Bella, the little girl I used to babysit. My stomach churned. "You've got no one," Sophia said, her voice soft but venomous. "No family, no name, just that necklace you cling to, like it makes you somebody." I didn't touch the photos. I just looked at her, my jaw tight, and said, "You don't know me." She laughed, a sound that cut like glass, and waved me away like I was nothing. But as I left, I saw her pick up her phone and dial, her voice dropping to a whisper. I didn't catch the words, but I saw the way her eyes flicked toward me, and I knew she wasn't done with me yet. Things got worse before they got better. One night, Dante dragged me into a room full of men in suits, their faces hard and their voices harder. He threw a stack of papers on the table and said I was a spy working for Victor Chen, some triad boss who was Matteo's enemy. The men started shouting, calling me a traitor, a whore, worse. One of them grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin, and said they should just kill me and be done with it. I thought about Bella, this little girl I used to babysit in foster care, the closest thing I ever had to a sister. They'd brought her up, said they'd hurt her if I didn't confess. I didn't have anything to confess. I just stood there, my heart pounding, my necklace cold against my skin. Matteo was there, but he didn't say a word. He just watched, his face like stone, and I thought, this is it. This is where it ends. But I wasn't going to beg. I looked at Dante right in his smug face and said, "You're lying, and you know it." My voice didn't shake, even though I was terrified. The room went quiet, but it didn't last. I don't know how I got out of that room alive, but I did. Later that night, someone slipped a key under my door. I didn't know who, but I took it and ran. I didn't get far, just to the edge of the estate, where I hid in the gardens, trying to figure out what to do. That's when I overheard Dante talking to someone on the phone, someone he called Chen. He was selling Matteo out, giving away secrets about shipments, deals, everything. I didn't have a plan, but I pulled out my phone and recorded it. Every word. When I got back to the mansion, I went straight to Matteo. My hands were shaking, but I held my head high and played the recording. "Dante's betraying you," I said. "I can prove it. But you have to promise me something. You protect me like family. No more games." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, and for once, he didn't argue. He just nodded and said, "Deal." The next morning, I was called to the kitchen of all places. One of the cooks, an older woman with deep lines around her eyes, pulled me aside while the others were busy chopping onions. She pressed a small tarnished key into my hand, her fingers rough but gentle. "This opens a door in the basement," she whispered, her eyes darting to the hallway. "There's something you need to see." I didn't ask questions. I just nodded, slipping the key into my pocket. That night, when the house was quiet, I crept down to the basement, my heart pounding with every creak of the stairs. The door was heavy, rusted, but the key worked. Inside was a small room, damp and cold, with a single box on a shelf. I opened it and found letters, dozens of them, written in the same handwriting as the journal I'd found. They were addressed to a child, me, maybe, full of apologies, promises to come back, and warnings about the family. I sat there in the dark, reading until my eyes burned, realizing someone had loved me enough to hide me, to protect me from this world. I didn't know who, but I felt their presence like a hand on my shoulder. But it wasn't over. A few days later, a letter showed up, passed around like gossip at the diner. It said I wasn't Matteo's lost heir, just the bastard daughter of some traitor from the Rossi family. Sophia stood up in front of everyone, Matteo's men, their allies, the whole underworld, and read it out loud, her voice dripping with venom. "She's not just trash," she said. "She's the spawn of betrayal." They dragged me out, tore my dress, ripped my necklace off, and threw it on the floor. I felt naked, exposed, like they'd stripped away everything that made me me. The worst part, Matteo didn't move. He didn't say a word. I looked at him, waiting for him to stand up to tell them they were wrong. But he just stood there, his eyes locked on the floor. I felt like I was nothing, like my whole life had been a lie. And now the truth was worse than I could have imagined. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear, but I didn't. I couldn't let them win. Right after Sophia's speech, one of her lackeys, a woman with sharp cheekbones and a diamond choker, stepped forward and grabbed my arm. She pulled me close, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered, "You're not even worth the dirt under our feet." Then she shoved me toward the crowd, and I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of a table. The room laughed, a sound that echoed in my bones. I saw Bella's face in my mind, her gap-toothed smile when I'd braid her hair, and I thought of how they'd threatened her. I straightened up, my hands shaking, and picked up a glass from the table. I didn't throw it. I just held it tight enough that my knuckles went white and said, "You can laugh, but you're the ones hiding behind lies." The room didn't go quiet, not exactly, but I saw a few heads turn, a few whispers. "Stop." I set the glass down, careful, like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart, and walked out, my torn dress trailing behind me like a flag. I don't know where I found the strength, but I stood up. My dress was torn, my hair a mess, but I walked to that necklace, picked it up, and put it back around my neck. The room was silent, every eye on me. I looked at Sophia, at Dante, at all of them, and said, "My blood doesn't matter. What matters is the truth." Then I played the recording, Dante and Sophia plotting together, setting me up to take the fall. The air in the room changed, like a storm had just broken. Sophia's face went white. Dante started to back away, but there was nowhere to go. And then Matteo moved. Not to me, not at first. He walked to the center of the room, and in front of everyone he knelt. Knelt? This man, this king of the underworld, got down on one knee and looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. "I believe you," he said, his voice steady. "And I swear on my blood you're one of us now." I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, my heart pounding, as the room erupted around us. The fallout was immediate. Sophia tried to slip out her heels, clicking frantically on the marble floor, but Matteo's men blocked her path. Dante was sweating, his hands fumbling for his phone, but one of the older bosses, a man with a scar across his throat, snatched it from him and smashed it under his boot. I stood there, still clutching my necklace, as the room turned on them. But it wasn't over for me. One of the men, a hulking guy with a gold chain, stepped forward and pointed at me. "She's still a nobody," he said, his voice booming. "Recording or not, she's not one of us." I felt the weight of their stares again, but this time I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, my voice clear, and said, "I don't need your approval. I've got the truth, and that's enough." Matteo's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something like pride there. He didn't say anything, just nodded, and the room shifted again, like the tide turning in my favor. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Victor Chen wasn't done. He wanted to break Matteo, and he knew the way to do it was through me. They grabbed me one night, threw me into a van, and took me to this warehouse. It was like something out of a nightmare, glass walls, cameras everywhere, and bombs wired to a timer on the wall. Chen's voice came over a speaker, taunting, "If she's really your queen, let her prove it. No one saves her, Matteo, not even you." The whole underworld was watching live on some dark web feed. I could see the timer counting down, red numbers, glowing like a death sentence. I screamed at Matteo through the glass, "Don't come. You'll lose everything." I meant it. I knew what his empire meant to him, what it cost to build it. I couldn't let him throw it away for me, but he didn't come. He stood there, his face unreadable, and then he turned and walked away. I thought I was done for. I thought I'd lost him, lost everything. The timer hit 1 minute, and I was shaking, tears streaming down my face, but I wasn't going to die like this. In that glass cage with the bombs ticking down, I saw something on the floor, a hairpin, dropped by one of the guards, glinting in the harsh light. My hands were trembling, but I grabbed it, bending it with my teeth, until it was a makeshift tool. I worked at the lock, my fingers slipping, sweat stinging my eyes. The timer was at 30 seconds when I heard the click. The door swung open, and I stumbled out, my legs barely holding me up. But the guards were waiting, their guns raised. I didn't think, just dove for the nearest one, knocking him down. That's when I felt it. The weight of a gun in my dress, hidden in the lining. Matteo's doing. I pulled it out, my hands steady now, and fired. The guard dropped, and I ran, the bombs still ticking behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. All I could hear was Chen's voice laughing over the speaker, fading as I broke free. I don't know how I did it. Maybe it was the way Mateo had looked at me like he believed I could do anything. Maybe it was the years of scraping by, of surviving when no one thought I could. But I found a way. I broke the lock on the glass door, my fingers bleeding from the effort. I tore at the wires on the bomb, praying I wouldn't set it off. And then I saw a gun tucked into the hem of my dress, hidden there by Mateo. He hadn't abandoned me. He'd given me a way out. I grabbed it, shot the guard coming for me, and ran. When I stumbled out of that room, the bomb still ticking behind me, the whole place went silent. Chen was screaming, but no one was listening. Mateo was there waiting, and when he saw me, he didn't run to me or try to play the hero. He just looked at me, blood on my hands, my dress torn, and said, "I didn't save you. You saved yourself. That's why you're my queen." We walked out together, blood on the floor, the cameras still rolling. The underworld saw it all, not a damsel, not a victim, but a woman who'd faced death and won. Mateo and I, we weren't just a man and a woman anymore. We were something more, something forged in fire and loyalty. I don't know what's next for us, but I know this: I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not small. I'm Lena Rossi, and I've earned my place. You've been there, haven't you? Felt like the world didn't see you. Like you had to fight just to be heard. You're not alone. You're stronger than they know. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.